When an ivory Rolls-Royce glided into Nathan Foster's oil-stained workshop on a blistering Thursday afternoon, he figured someone had taken a wrong turn. Wealthy folks didn't venture into his part of San Diego, not unless their navigation system had a twisted sense of irony. Then he caught sight of her, a 19-year-old woman trapped inside elaborate metal braces, her expression etched with the kind of agony that had stopped seeking relief years ago because relief had stopped arriving. Her mother, a woman who carried prosperity like protective plating, was frantic. And Nathan, a widowed auto mechanic with weathered hands and a vow buried deep within his soul, was about to gamble everything to restore a stranger's existence. Quick pause before we continue. If you're watching this from somewhere in the world right now, let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if you're enjoying stories like this, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because tomorrow's episode, it goes even deeper than this. The afternoon sun hammered the fractured pavement of Foster's Auto Service, as if it harbored a grudge against everything still upright in this neglected section of San Diego. Nathan Foster occupied the open bay entrance, a navy work cloth in one palm and a tool in the other, studying the heat distortions ascending from the lot. The area was hushed, the sort of hush that settles when folks are too preoccupied with enduring to generate commotion. He'd been laboring on Mrs. Anderson's Civic since sunrise, swapping a timing belt that should have been switched 2 years prior. She couldn't manage it then. She could scarcely manage it presently. But Nathan had discovered long ago that certain invoices you simply didn't dispatch. The workshop itself stood as a testament to resourcefulness. Fractured concrete surfaces, overhead lights that sputtered when they chose, walls draped in supplier calendars reaching back to 2015. The waiting space consisted of 3 mismatched seats, a coffee apparatus that only functioned if you struck it precisely right, and an assortment of dated periodicals his late spouse had arranged before her illness. He'd intended to discard them. 5 years onward they remained. Nathan was 38, though certain days he felt 60, tall and spare, with dark locks beginning to display silver at the sides and hands bearing the permanent marks of someone who devoted his entire existence to repairing items. His daughter, Lily, informed him he needed to grin more. Simple for a 14-year-old to declare. She hadn't witnessed someone perish gradually. Hadn't made commitments to individuals who couldn't perceive them anymore. He was preparing to retreat inside when he detected it, the subdued, commanding rumble of an engine that had no place anywhere near this postal code. Nathan straightened, observing as an ivory Rolls-Royce Phantom sailed down the avenue like a swan that had strayed into a scrapyard. "You must be joking," he muttered under his breath. The vehicle pivoted into his property, advancing with the kind of cautious exactness that implied the operator was petrified of damaging it. It halted near the workshop entrance, and momentarily nobody emerged. Nathan could distinguish 2 silhouettes inside, shadows behind tinted glass. Then the rear entrance opened. The woman who surfaced was likely in her mid-40s, though she'd obviously invested a fortune ensuring nobody could determine for certain. She wore an ivory pantsuit that likely exceeded Nathan's pickup in value, her dark locks secured in a manner that was simultaneously austere and refined. Everything regarding her, from her bearing to how she surveyed the workshop with barely masked repugnance, proclaimed wealth and authority. But it was the second individual who made Nathan forget the heat, the lubricant on his hands, and the incomplete Civic behind him. The young woman who emerged, truly, perhaps 19, moved as though every fraction of movement extracted something from her. Her legs were encased in intricate braces, metal and synthetic materials extending from her hips to her ankles, with articulations at the knees that secured and discharged with small mechanical noises. She gripped a walking stick in her right hand, her knuckles pale with exertion. But it was her expression that struck Nathan like a blow to the sternum. She was attempting so intensely not to display the suffering, lips compressed firmly, eyes concentrated on the surface, breathing meticulously regulated. He'd witnessed that expression previously. His brother Ryan had displayed it daily for the final 3 years of his existence. "Pardon me." The older woman's tone was sharp, businesslike, the sort of inflection accustomed to being heated. "Is there someone present who can assist us? Our vehicle has overheated." Nathan pulled himself back to the moment. "That would be myself, Nathan Foster." He approached them, noting how the woman positioned herself marginally ahead of the young woman, protective. "Allow me to examine it." He released the hood and vapor hissed outward. The scent of heated coolant pervaded the atmosphere. A conduit had ruptured, likely strained by the temperature. An elementary repair, 15 minutes maximum, but Nathan discovered himself glancing past the engine at the young woman who had relocated to recline against the building's side, her face oriented toward the shade. "Coolant conduit," he stated, straightening. "I can complete it in 20 minutes. You're welcome to remain inside where there's climate control." He indicated toward the small office that served dual purpose as a waiting chamber. "Appreciate it." The woman's inflection suggested she was accustomed to individuals expressing gratitude to her, not reciprocally. "I'm Victoria Pierce. This is my daughter Madison." The names signified nothing to Nathan, though how Victoria articulated them implied they should. He acknowledged Madison, who managed a small, depleted smile. "Pleasure to encounter you both. Let me get you situated inside, then I'll address the vehicle." The waiting chamber was nothing resembling what they were accustomed to. Nathan could discern that immediately. Victoria's eyes traversed the deteriorated seats, the archaic periodicals, the water dispenser in the corner with visible mineral accumulation. But she didn't protest. She simply assisted Madison to the most stable-appearing seat, moving with the rehearsed competency of someone who'd executed this 1,000 occasions. Madison descended into the seat with excruciating deliberateness, every muscle in her frame tense. When she finally settled, she released a breath that was nearly a gasp. "Can I obtain some water for you?" Nathan inquired. "Fair warning, the dispenser's more aged than my daughter, but the water's chilled." "Please," Madison said quietly. Her voice sounded like she didn't utilize it extensively. Nathan filled 2 paper vessels and distributed them. Victoria accepted hers with an acknowledgement. Madison grasped hers with both hands, and he observed the slight tremor in her fingers. "I'll be directly outside if you require anything," he stated, then proceeded back to the Rolls-Royce. He labored rapidly, his hands progressing through the familiar movements of loosening fasteners, extracting the burst conduit, installing the replacement. But his mind was elsewhere. The young woman, Madison, couldn't have been beyond 19, 20 at maximum, and those braces weren't provisional. This was her existence, had been for a duration based on how she moved. Nathan understood more about mobility apparatus than most mechanics had any justification to. His brother Ryan had been paralyzed from the waist downward following a motorcycle collision when Nathan was 22. For 8 years, Nathan had observed Ryan struggle with wheelchairs, braces, experimental therapies that promised everything and provided nothing. He'd acquired the ability to identify the indicators of chronic suffering, how individuals compensated, the toll it extracted. Madison possessed all those indicators and additional. He was securing the final fastener when he detected it, a sharp inhalation of breath, nearly a whimper, rapidly suppressed. Nathan glanced upward through the office window. He could observe Madison shifting in her seat, her face contorted. Victoria was beside her immediately, one hand on her daughter's shoulder. Nathan positioned down his tool and entered inside. "Everything satisfactory?" Victoria glanced upward, and for merely a second her professional mask slipped. He witnessed exhaustion there and fear and something that might have been hope expiring slowly. "She's acceptable, just requires a moment." "Mother, I'm fine," Madison whispered, but her voice was strained. Nathan understood he should attend to his own affairs. These were customers, strangers, individuals from a realm so distant from his that they might as well originate from another planet. But he'd made a commitment once, standing in a hospital chamber that smelled like antiseptic and defeat. He'd committed to Ryan that if he ever encountered someone enduring the way Ryan had endured, he wouldn't avert his gaze. Mind if I inquire what variety of braces those are? He maintained his tone casual, the identical voice he utilized when conversing with customers about their vehicles. Victoria's eyes constricted marginally. They're custom orthotic apparatus manufactured by one of the finest medical equipment producers in the nation. I'm confident they are, Nathan stated, but they're causing her pain. She has a spinal condition, Victoria said, her voice acquiring an edge. The braces are essential for support. Her physicians. I'm not disputing her physicians, Nathan interrupted gently. But I devoted 8 years observing my brother manage braces, wheelchairs, every variety of mobility aid imaginable, and I acquired the ability to distinguish the difference between necessary discomfort and discomfort being generated by the equipment itself. Madison glanced upward at him, and he witnessed something shift in her eyes, interest, perhaps even hope. What do you signify? Nathan retrieved one of the other seats and sat, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. When you're upright or ambulatory, where does it hurt predominantly? My hips, Madison stated immediately. And my lower spine, but that's normal, the physician stated. It's compensation, Nathan stated. Your body's attempting to function around the braces instead of with them. May I? He indicated toward her legs. Victoria commenced to object, but Madison nodded. Nathan moved nearer, examining the braces without contact. They were impressive components of engineering, carbon fiber frameworks, titanium articulations, precision manufacturing. Someone had invested a fortune on these, but the angles were incorrect. The knee articulations, he stated, indicating. They're secured at marginally different angles. Observe how your left leg sits perhaps 2 degrees more extended than your right. That signifies when you're upright, your hips aren't level. Your left hip sits elevated, so your spine must curve to compensate. Every step you execute, your lower spine is twisting to maintain you upright. Madison stared at him. I've consulted 17 different specialists, physical therapists, orthopedic surgeons, neurologists. Nobody ever, her voice fractured. They all stated the pain was component of my condition, that I simply needed to manage it. How extended have you been wearing these specific braces? Nathan inquired. 3 years, Victoria stated quietly. They cost $800,000. Nathan released a low whistle. Well, that's regrettable because they're incorrect. The difficulty isn't your condition, it's that these are combating your body instead of supporting it. Victoria stood abruptly. Mr. Foster, I appreciate your concern, but my daughter has received care from some of the most renowned physicians globally. Individuals with decades of experience and multiple degrees. And I'm a mechanic with soiled hands and a high school diploma, Nathan stated, standing to encounter her eyes. I comprehend, but credentials don't signify much if the fundamentals are incorrect, and the fundamental difficulty here is equilibrium. Everything in motion, whether it's a vehicle or a human body, requires equilibrium around its center of gravity. These braces are compelling Madison's center of gravity to shift with every step. That's why she's in pain. This is preposterous, Victoria stated, but there was diminished conviction in her voice presently. Allow him to examine, Mother. Madison's voice was quiet but resolute. Please, what's the worst that could transpire? I'm already in pain every solitary day. At minimum, he's offering an explanation that makes sense. Victoria closed her eyes for an extended moment. When she opened them, Nathan witnessed something he hadn't anticipated: desperation. This woman, who likely commanded boardrooms and executed million-dollar decisions before breakfast, was desperate. You possess no credentials, she stated slowly. No medical license, no engineering degree. If you're incorrect, if you harm her, then you'll prosecute me for everything I own, which wouldn't require long, Nathan stated. I comprehend the risk you're assuming. But I must inquire, what risk is Madison assuming if nothing alters? Madison released a sound that might have been laughter or a sob. I'll be precisely where I am presently, trapped, hurting, observing my existence transpire through a window. Victoria's hand tightened on her daughter's shoulder. I want him to attempt, Madison stated. I understand you've invested millions. I understand you've transported me globally to consult specialists. I understand you've executed everything a mother could possibly execute. But mother, I'm 19 years of age and I can't recall what it feels like to stand without pain. If there's even a possibility, her voice fractured. Victoria pulled her daughter close, both of them weeping now. Nathan averted his gaze, providing them privacy, feeling like an intruder on a moment too raw for strangers to witness. After an extended moment, Victoria straightened, wiping her eyes with the kind of precise movements that suggested she rarely permitted herself to weep. What would you need to execute? First, just examine the braces more thoroughly, Nathan stated. Obtain some measurements, observe precisely what's occurring. Then if I'm correct about the difficulty, I'd need to adjust the articulation angles. It's delicate labor, but it's not complicated, not truly. When? Madison inquired. Nathan checked his timepiece. It was 2 in the afternoon. Lily wouldn't be home from school until 4. Presently works if you've got time. Your vehicle will be prepared in 10 minutes regardless. Victoria surveyed the workshop, the fractured surface, the archaic equipment, the general atmosphere of barely regulated chaos. This wasn't a state-of-the-art facility. This wasn't even a particularly hygienic facility. But her daughter was regarding Nathan Foster like he just offered her the sun and the moon. Acceptable, Victoria stated, but I want to be explicit. If at any point I believe you're causing harm, we cease immediately. Absolutely, Nathan agreed. I wouldn't possess it any other manner. He completed the vehicle repair while Victoria made telephone calls, canceling appointments, rescheduling meetings, utilizing the kind of clipped, efficient language that suggested she was accustomed to her schedule bending to her will rather than reciprocally. Madison sat quietly, observing Nathan labor with an intensity that made him self-conscious. You can inquire, he stated finally, closing the hood of the Rolls-Royce. Whatever you're pondering. Your brother, Madison stated softly. You stated you cared for him for 8 years. What transpired? Nathan was quiet for a moment, wiping his hands on his cloth, even though they were already clean. Pneumonia. His immune system was compromised from all the medications. He fought it for 2 weeks, but he shrugged, attempting to make it appear casual. That was 5 years ago. I'm sorry, Madison stated, and she intended it. He could detect it in her voice. Yeah, me too. Nathan cleared his throat. Ryan made me commit something before he died. He stated if I ever encountered someone who was managing what he managed, I shouldn't just pass by. That's the aspect about suffering. Once you've witnessed it proximately, you can't unwitness it. You can't pretend it's not transpiring. Madison nodded slowly. Most individuals pretend rather effectively. Most individuals haven't observed someone they love struggle every day just to exist, Nathan stated. Alters your perspective. He established a work area in the workshop bay, clearing a large table and positioning it near his optimal light. Victoria assisted Madison over, the two of them moving in the synchronized manner of individuals who'd been managing this for years. Madison sat on the table's edge while Nathan retrieved a stool and a notebook. Acceptable, he stated. First things first. I need to comprehend the mechanics of what we're laboring with. Communicate me through what transpired. How did you conclude in braces? Madison inhaled, and he could observe her mentally stepping back through years of painful memories. I was 8. We were at the beach, just Mother and me, this rare day where she wasn't laboring. There was a sandbar and I swam out to it, but I didn't observe the riptide. She paused. I descended under. Mother dove in after me, but by the time she retrieved me back to shore, I'd been without oxygen for nearly 4 minutes. Brain damage, Nathan stated. It affected my motor control, specifically my legs. The physician stated I'd never ambulate again. But you did, Nathan stated regarding the braces. With assistance, intensive therapy, experimental treatments, these braces, I can ambulate technically, but she closed her eyes. It's like my body is combating itself every solitary second, and it hurts. It always hurts. Nathan made notations, sketching rough diagrams of the brace structure. The pain, is it constant or does it spike during certain movements? Both, Madison stated. There's baseline pain like a 4 out of 10, but when I ambulate it shoots up to 7 or 8. Standing stationary is actually worse sometimes because all the pressure is just sitting on my hips and spine. And the braces themselves, when you position them on in the morning, do they feel tight, loose? Where are the contact points? Madison indicated to various locations on the braces, the hip articulations, the knee supports, the ankle cuffs. Nathan examined each one, running his fingers along the edges, checking how they sat against her body. He could observe pressure points, locations where the metal and composite had rubbed against skin for so extended that there were permanent marks. Victoria observed him labor with the intensity of a hawk, prepared to swoop in at the first indication of trouble. But Nathan moved carefully, explaining everything he was executing, requesting permission before each contact. After 45 minutes of examination and note-taking, he sat back. Acceptable, I believe I've comprehended it. And, Victoria inquired. The braces are engineered beautifully, Nathan stated. Whoever designed them understood their materials, understood the mechanics of load distribution, but they constructed them for a theoretical patient, not for Madison specifically. Observe here, he indicated to the hip articulations. These are set at angles that would be perfect for someone with completely symmetrical muscle development and bone structure. But Madison's right side is more robust than her left because that's how she's compensated for years. The braces don't account for that. They're compelling both sides to move identically, which signifies her body must combat the stronger side to accommodate the weaker one. So what would you execute differently? Madison inquired, leaning forward despite the pain it caused. Nathan flipped to a new page in his notebook and commenced sketching. I'd adjust the articulation angles to account for your natural compensation patterns. Instead of combating them, we'd labor with them. I'd also redistribute the contact points. Right now, excessive pressure is concentrated at your hips and lower spine. We could spread that load more evenly along your legs. He hesitated. What? Victoria demanded. The weight. These braces are heavy because they're constructed to be strong. But strength isn't always what you require. Sometimes you require flexibility. I believe we could reconstruct them with lighter materials in certain locations, maintain the structural integrity where it matters, but reduce the overall load Madison's carrying by perhaps 20%. Madison's eyes were bright with something Nathan recognized as dangerous. Hope. He'd witnessed it before in Ryan's eyes every time a new treatment was suggested. Hope was a blade that cut both directions. How extended would it require? She inquired. To execute the adjustments, I'd need to disassemble the braces, which signifies you'd need another manner to navigate. I have a wheelchair, Madison stated rapidly. In the vehicle, I detest it, but I have it. Nathan nodded. Good, then I'd stayed a week, perhaps 2. I'd need to source some materials, execute the mechanical labor, test everything multiple times. We can remunerate you, Victoria stated. Whatever you require. I don't want your money, Nathan interrupted. Not yet, not until we understand if this actually functions. If it does, you can remunerate me fair rate for the labor and materials. If it doesn't, he shrugged, then it's on me. Victoria stared at him like he'd just articulated a foreign language. I don't comprehend. Why would you execute this? Nathan thought about Ryan, about commitments made in hospital chambers and the weight of observing someone suffer when you couldn't assist. He thought about his own daughter, Lily, and how he'd move mountains for her if she needed him to. Because I can, he stated simply, and because Madison inquired, that's sufficient. The silence that followed was broken by the sound of the office telephone ringing. Nathan excused himself to answer it, Mrs. Anderson inquiring about her Civic. He informed her it'd be prepared tomorrow, no charge for the extra labor. When he returned, Madison and Victoria were conversing in low voices, their heads closed together. They glanced upward as he approached. We'd like to proceed, Victoria stated formally, like they were signing a business contract. But I need to understand, what if this makes things worse? What if you adjust something and Madison concludes in more pain? It was a fair question, the kind that required an honest answer. That's possible, Nathan admitted. Laboring with the human body is different from laboring with vehicles. There are more variables, more aspects that can go incorrect. I can't guarantee this will function. All I can communicate to you is that I'll be careful. I'll test everything thoroughly, and if something doesn't feel correct, we'll cease and reassess. Madison reached for her mother's hand. It's worth the risk. You don't understand that, Victoria stated, but there was no heat in it, just fear. Yes, I do, because right now this is my existence. Madison gestured at the braces, at her own body. Pain and limitation and observing everyone else move through the world while I'm trapped. If there's a possibility, even a small one, that things could be different, I must assume it. Victoria closed her eyes again, and Nathan witnessed her gathering herself, pulling on that armor of control and certainty. When she opened her eyes, she was all business. What do you require from us? They devoted the next hour laboring out logistics. Madison would need to be without the braces for at minimum a week, probably 2. Victoria would clear her schedule to remain with her daughter in San Diego. They'd obtain a hotel nearby. Nathan would need detailed specifications from the brace manufacturer, which Victoria committed to obtain regardless of what confidentiality agreements she had to breach. By the time they departed, the sun was commencing to dip toward the horizon, painting the workshop in amber light. Nathan assisted Madison to the vehicle. She'd switched to her wheelchair, which she maneuvered with practiced efficiency despite obvious distaste. Gratitude, she stated, regarding upward at him from the seat. For perceiving me, for believing you could assist. Haven't assisted yet, Nathan stated. Let's observe if I can actually accomplish this before we commence celebrating. You will, Madison stated with absolute certainty. I don't understand why, but I believe you will. After they drove away, Nathan stood in the empty workshop regarding the notations he'd taken, the sketches he'd made. What had he just gotten himself into? He was a mechanic, not a medical professional. If this went incorrect, if he harmed that young woman. But then he thought about the appearance in Madison's eyes, that desperate, dying hope. He thought about Ryan, about all the times he'd wished someone would just attempt something different instead of adhering to protocols and procedures that clearly weren't functioning. He thought about commitments made and kept. Acceptable, Ryan, he stated to the empty atmosphere. I'm going to need your assistance on this one. His phone buzzed, Lily texting that she was home and commencing homework. Nathan smiled, locked up the workshop, and proceeded home. Tomorrow, he'd commence figuring out how to keep the commitment he'd just made. Tonight, he'd have dinner with his daughter and attempt not to think about all the manners this could go catastrophically incorrect. Lily was waiting at the kitchen table when Nathan got home, her algebra textbook open but clearly forgotten. At 14, she possessed her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn chin, and right now both were pointed directly at him with an expression he knew all too well. You're late, she stated, not glancing upward from her phone. And you've got that appearance. What appearance? Nathan dropped his keys on the counter and proceeded toward the refrigerator. The one you acquire when you're about to execute something that's either really intelligent or really foolish, and you haven't figured out which yet. She finally glanced upward. So what is it this time? Another project vehicle you're going to restore and never complete. Nathan pulled out leftovers from last night's dinner and positioned them in the microwave. Not a vehicle, a person. That acquired her attention. Lily set down her phone. What person? He communicated to her about Madison and Victoria, about the braces and the pain and the commitment he'd made. Lily listened with the kind of intense focus she usually reserved for her favorite shows, occasionally inquiring questions that were sharper than most adults would think to inquire. So let me get this straight, she stated when he completed. You're going to disassemble some super expensive medical equipment that was manufactured by actual professionals, redesign it based on what you learned from Uncle Ryan, and hope you don't accidentally make things worse for this young woman. That about summarizes it up. Yeah. Lily was quiet for a moment. Uncle Ryan would have appreciated that. He always stated the worst component wasn't the seat or the pain. It was everyone treating him like he was made of glass, like he couldn't handle the truth. I recall. Nathan pulled his dinner from the microwave and sat across from her. He made me commit, you understand, before he died, that if I ever witnessed someone suffering the way he did, I wouldn't just walk away. I understand, Father, you've communicated to me. Lily's voice was gentle. But you also need to be realistic. What if you can't assist her? What if you make things worse? It was the identical question Victoria had inquired, and Nathan still didn't possess a better answer. Then I'll have to exist with that. But Lily, you didn't observe her face. She's 19 years of age, and she appears like she's already surrendered on everything that matters. If there's even a possibility I can alter that. Then you have to attempt, Lily completed. I comprehend. Just be careful, acceptable. You've got a tendency to care excessively much about other individuals and not sufficiently about yourself. Nathan smiled. When did you acquire so wise? I've always been wise, you just don't listen. She stood up and kissed the top of his head. I'm going to complete my homework, attempt not to remain up all night researching biomechanics or whatever. But that's precisely what Nathan executed. After Lily went to bed, he retrieved his laptop and dove into everything he could discover about mobility braces, spinal injuries, compensation patterns, and gait mechanics. He read medical journals he barely comprehended, observed videos of physical therapy sessions, and sketched design after design in his notebook. By 2 in the morning, his eyes were burning and his brain felt like mush. But he possessed the beginnings of a plan. The modifications he wanted to make weren't revolutionary. They were just logical applications of principles he already comprehended. Balance, distribution of force, laboring with the body's natural tendencies instead of against them. He finally fell asleep at his kitchen table, his head pillowed on his arms, dreaming of angles and articulations, and a young woman who'd forgotten what it felt like to move without pain. The next morning, Victoria called at precisely 8 o'clock. Nathan was already at the workshop, having woken at dawn with ideas he needed to labor out on paper. We're at the Bayfront Hotel, she stated without preamble. Chamber 412, when can you commence? I need the manufacturer's specifications first, Nathan stated, and I want to examine another appearance at the braces in better light, obtain some precise measurements. I'm having the specifications transmitted to your email. They should arrive within the hour. There was a pause. I may have threatened legal action to acquire them to cooperate. I'm not going to inquire. Nathan grabbed a notepad. I can arrive by this afternoon around 2. Does that function for you? We'll be here. The specifications arrived at 9:15, and Nathan devoted the next 4 hours poring over them. The braces were even more sophisticated than he'd thought. Microprocessors in the articulations that adjusted resistance based on movement patterns, sensors that tracked stress distribution, composite materials that were more robust than steel and lighter than aluminum. Someone had positioned serious engineering genius into these items. They just hadn't positioned in sufficient humanity. At 2 o'clock sharp, Nathan knocked on the entrance of Chamber 412 at the Bayfront Hotel. Victoria answered immediately, like she'd been waiting by the entrance. "Enter. Madison's resting, but she's awake." The hotel chamber was one of those suites that cost more per night than Nathan made in a week. Madison was on the sofa by the window, her legs elevated on pillows, the wheelchair folded nearby. She appeared tired, but she smiled when she observed him. "Hey," she stated, "prepared to disassemble me?" "Just the braces," Nathan stated, setting down his tool bag. "You acquire to remain in one component." He devoted the next hour executing a detailed examination, measuring every articulation angle, every contact point, every stress distribution pattern. He had Madison move through different positions, sitting, standing with support, executing a few careful steps, while he observed how the braces interacted with her body. Victoria observed it all with hawk eyes, occasionally inquiring questions that revealed she devoted the night executing her own research. She might not comprehend the mechanics the manner Nathan did, but she was intelligent sufficiently to understand when something didn't make sense. "The left hip articulation," she stated at one point. "Why is it set 2 degrees elevated than the right?" "Because whoever designed these assumed Madison's hips were level," Nathan explained. "But they're not. Her right hip sits marginally elevated because of how her spine compensates for the muscle weakness on her left side. The braces are attempting to compel her into a position her body physically can't maintain." Madison winced as she shifted position. "Is that why it always feels like I'm combating myself when I ambulate?" "Precisely. Your body understands what it needs to execute to remain balanced. The braces are communicating it to execute something different. That conflict is causing the pain." After the examination, Nathan laid out his plan. He'd need to disassemble the braces completely, which would require a full day. Then he'd adjust the articulation angles, redistribute the contact points, and replace some of the heavier structural elements with lighter alternatives that would maintain strength while reducing weight. "How extended?" Madison inquired. 2 weeks if everything goes correct, perhaps 3 if I encounter difficulties." Nathan regarded Victoria. "And there will be difficulties. There always are when you're laboring with something this complex." "What variety of difficulties?" Victoria's voice possessed that sharp edge again. "Material issues mostly. Some of what I want to execute will require fabrication, custom components that don't exist yet. I'll need to source materials, test them, make certain they can handle the stress loads." He paused. "And there's always the possibility I'll acquire everything positioned back together and realize I was incorrect about the difficulty." Madison reached for her mother's hand. "It's acceptable, Mother. I trust him." "You trust too easily," Victoria stated, but there was no heat in it. She regarded Nathan. "What do you require from us?" "Just patience, and Madison needs to be careful in the wheelchair. No risks, no pushing it. The final aspect we require is an injury while we're executing this." They agreed that Nathan would assume the braces with him that afternoon. Victoria had already arranged for a vehicle service to transport Madison anywhere she needed to go, and the hotel was wheelchair accessible. Madison removed the braces with Nathan's assistance, a process that required 20 minutes and left her pale and shaking. "God, I detest this component," she whispered as the final piece came off. "Detest what?" Nathan inquired, carefully setting the brace components in the protective case he'd brought. "Being helpless, being the young woman in the seat who needs assistance with everything." Madison blinked hard against tears. "I understand I should be grateful I can ambulate at all. The physician stated I never would, but sometimes I just want to run, just once. I want to understand what it feels like." Nathan regarded this young woman who'd been dealt a terrible hand and had somehow not let it destroy her, and he felt the weight of what he'd committed settle even heavier on his shoulders. "We'll acquire you there," he stated, "one manner or another." The first 3 days were devoted just comprehending what he was laboring with. Nathan disassembled the braces component by component, documenting everything, obtaining measurements, testing the range of motion in each articulation. He labored in the workshop late into the night after the regular customers had departed, with only the fluorescent lights and the radio for company. Lily would cease by after school, executing her homework on the old sofa in the office while her father labored. Sometimes she'd inquire questions about what he was executing, and Nathan would explain the mechanics of it all, how force transferred through articulations, how angles affected stability, how the human body was just another machine that needed proper maintenance. "You converse about individuals like they're vehicles," Lily observed one evening. "Vehicles are simpler," Nathan stated, examining a hip articulation under his work light. "But the principles are identical. Everything needs to be balanced. Everything needs to function together. And when something's incorrect, you have to discover the root cause, not just treat the symptoms." On the fourth day, Madison and Victoria came to the workshop. Madison maneuvered her wheelchair through the entrance with the kind of aggressive competence that suggested she was still angry about requiring it. "I wanted to observe where the magic was transpiring," she stated, regarding around the space with genuine interest. "Not much magic," Nathan stated, "mostly just trial and error and a lot of profanity." He displayed her the braces, now completely disassembled and laid out on his largest work table. Madison stared at all the components, the articulations, the frameworks, the sensors, the composite panels, like she was witnessing them for the first time. "I've worn these for 3 years," she stated quietly. "I never truly thought about how they functioned. They were just component of me." "That's the difficulty," Nathan stated. "They shouldn't feel like a component of you. They should feel like a tool you're utilizing, something that makes your existence easier, not harder." He walked her through his planned modifications, utilizing the actual components to illustrate what he wanted to alter. Victoria inquired sharp questions about structural integrity and safety margins. Madison just listened, her eyes tracking every movement, every explanation. "Can I attempt something?" she inquired suddenly. "Depends what it is," Nathan stated. Madison wheeled over to the table and retrieved one of the knee articulations, turning it over in her hands. "When I ambulate, this is the component that locks up sometimes. It's supposed to release smoothly, but it catches." "Why?" Nathan accepted the articulation from her and examined it. "Observe the sensor here. It's measuring the angle of flexion and communicating the microprocessor when to release the lock. But the threshold is set too elevated. Your natural walking gait doesn't quite reach that angle, so the articulation thinks you're not prepared to advance to the next step. So it's waiting for me to execute something I physically can't execute." "Precisely." Madison laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Story of my existence. Everyone waiting for me to execute things I can't execute, then wondering why I'm not attempting hard sufficiently." Victoria's hand tightened on her daughter's shoulder. Nathan witnessed years of frustration and grief in that simple gesture. "Well, we're going to alter the thresholds," he stated. "Make the articulations respond to what you can actually execute, not what some algorithm thinks you should execute." They remained for another hour, Madison inquiring questions, and Nathan answering them with the kind of detailed honesty he'd have utilized with any colleague. He displayed her the new materials he was planning to utilize: lighter composite panels, redesigned contact points with better padding, adjusted articulations that would move in harmony with her body instead of against it. When they finally departed, Lily emerged from the office where she'd been pretending to execute homework. "She's pleasant," Lily stated. "Scary intelligent, too. Did you detect some of those questions?" "She's been existing with this for 11 years, Nathan stated. "Of course she's intelligent about it. You learn everything you can about the aspect that's ruining your existence." "Is that what Uncle Ryan executed?" Nathan nodded. He understood more about spinal injuries and mobility equipment than most of his physicians, not because he wanted to, because he had to. When something controls your entire existence, you either learn everything about it or you go insane. Lily was quiet for a moment. Do you think you can truly assist her? I don't understand, Nathan admitted, but I'm going to attempt like hell. The first prototype was completed on day 7. Nathan had labored 16 hours straight to acquire it executed, fueled by coffee and stubbornness and the memory of commitments made. He called Madison at 8 in the morning, understanding it was too early but unable to wait. I've acquired something, he stated when she answered. It's not perfect, but I want you to attempt it. They came within the hour. Madison transferred from her wheelchair to Nathan's work seat, a tall stool with back support, while he carefully fitted the modified braces onto her legs. He'd lightened them by 18%, redistributed the contact points to spread pressure more evenly, and adjusted every articulation angle to labor with her natural compensation patterns instead of against them. How does it feel? He inquired, securing the final strap. Different, Madison stated. She shifted her weight, testing. Lighter. The pressure on my hips is diminished. That's the idea. Think you can stand? With Nathan on one side and Victoria on the other, Madison eased off the stool and onto her feet. For a moment, she just stood there, breathing carefully. Well, Victoria inquired, her voice tight with controlled anxiety. It's better, Madison stated slowly. The hip pain is definitely diminished, but she executed a careful step and Nathan witnessed her face alter. Oh, what? What's incorrect? Victoria was already reaching for her. Nothing's incorrect, it's just... Madison executed another step, then another. The left knee, it's catching worse than before. Nathan swore under his breath. He'd adjusted the angle, but he'd overcorrected. The articulation was now releasing too early, causing Madison's left leg to buckle marginally with each step. Acceptable, let's acquire you sitting, he stated, guiding her back to the stool. I observe what transpired, I can fix it. How extended? Madison inquired, and he could detect the disappointment she was attempting to hide. 2 days, perhaps 3. I need to recalibrate the sensor thresholds and adjust the articulation resistance. He was already making notations, his mind racing through solutions. The good news is the hip relief is functioning precisely like I hoped, so we're on the correct track. On the correct track isn't ambulating, Madison stated quietly. Nathan knelt down so he was at eye level with her. No, it's not. And I'm sorry. This is the component I warned you about, the difficulties, the setbacks, the trial and error. But we learned something important today. We understand the hip modifications function. We just need to fine-tune the knees. Madison nodded, but he could observe her pulling back, protecting herself from hope. He recognized that defense mechanism. Ryan had utilized it constantly toward the end, when every new treatment had failed and the next one was just another manner to be disappointed. After they departed, Nathan returned to labor with renewed intensity. The knee articulation issue was mechanical. He'd made the spring resistance too light, causing the lock to release before Madison's leg was prepared to support her weight. He needed something more robust, but still responsive sufficiently to match her gait. He devoted 2 days fabricating a new articulation mechanism, testing it on a rig he constructed specifically for the purpose. Lily came home from school to discover the workshop transformed into something resembling a mad scientist's laboratory, with springs and sensors and calibration equipment scattered across every surface. "Father, you need to sleep," she stated, noting the coffee vessels and the shadows under his eyes. "I will soon. I'm close to something." "That's what you stated yesterday and the day before." She grabbed his shoulders and turned him to face her. "Madison needs you to succeed, which signifies she needs you to not collapse from exhaustion. Assume a break, eat something, sleep for like 6 hours. The braces will still be here tomorrow." She was correct, of course. Nathan compelled himself to cease at midnight, went home, and slept for 5 hours before his brain woke him up with a new idea about sensor calibration. The second prototype was prepared on day 10. This time, when Madison stood up, both knees locked and released smoothly. She executed one step, then two, then five. The concentration on her face was absolute. "How's the pain?" Nathan inquired. "It's there," Madison stated, still ambulating. "But it's different, diminished sharp, more like pressure. Is that normal?" "Depends. Rate it for me, 1 to 10. "Perhaps a 5 compared to the usual 7 or 8. She ceased, breathing hard. "But I'm tired, like truly tired. My legs feel like rubber." Nathan assisted her sit. "That's because you're utilizing different muscle groups. The braces are making your body function differently, so muscles that weren't being stressed before are suddenly acquiring a workout." "Is that good or bad?" Victoria inquired. "Good mostly. It signifies Madison's body is adapting to the new support structure, but it also signifies we need to build up her strength gradually. Can't just jump into utilizing these all day." Over the next few days, Madison came to the workshop for short sessions, 20 minutes at first, then 30, then 45. Each time Nathan made small adjustments based on her feedback. A marginally different angle here, a softer contact point there, a recalibrated sensor threshold. And each time Madison ambulated a little longer, stood a little straighter, complained about the pain a little diminished. But there were setbacks. On day 13, one of the ankle articulations fractured under stress, and Nathan had to completely reconstruct it with more robust materials. On day 15, Madison developed a pressure sore on her right hip from a contact point that was positioned 2 millimeters too far forward. Each difficulty transmitted Nathan back to the drawing board, testing and adjusting and testing again. Lily observed her father labor with a mixture of pride and concern. "You're going to fix this," she communicated to him one night. "I understand you are." "How do you understand?" Nathan inquired, not glancing upward from the articulation he was recalibrating. "Because you committed and you don't break commitments, not to Uncle Ryan and not to Madison," Lily smiled. "She'd also remind you that you don't have to execute this alone. You've acquired Dr. Reed, Victoria, Madison, and me. We're a team. Let us assist carry the weight." On day 16, everything came together. The modifications were complete. The calibrations were perfect. And when Madison stood up, she didn't wince. She executed one step, then another, then commenced ambulating around the workshop with increasing confidence. "How do you feel?" Nathan inquired, observing her carefully for indications of pain or instability. "Good," Madison stated, and then she ceased, her eyes widening. "Actually good. Not just better than before, but actually genuinely good. My hips don't hurt. My spine doesn't hurt. I'm tired, but I'm not in pain." She regarded her mother, who possessed both hands pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Mother, I'm not in pain," Madison whispered. Victoria pulled her daughter into a fierce embrace, and they both wept while Nathan politely turned away, pretending to check his notations. These moments weren't for him. He was just the mechanic who'd turned some tools and adjusted some angles. But when Madison pulled away from her mother and embraced him too, he let himself feel it, the weight of a commitment kept, the relief of success against odds, the simple human satisfaction of fixing something that was broken. "Gratitude," Madison whispered against his shoulder. "Gratitude, gratitude, gratitude." "You're welcome," Nathan stated, his voice rough. "But we're not executed yet. This is just the beginning." Because what came next wasn't celebration, it was proof. Madison could ambulate around the workshop without pain, but the workshop was controlled territory. Flat surfaces, no obstacles, Nathan standing by, prepared to catch her if something went incorrect. The real world was different. The real world possessed curbs and stairs and uneven pavement and individuals who didn't slow down or make room. "I want to attempt outside," Madison stated the next morning, arriving at the workshop with a determination Nathan hadn't witnessed before. "Actual sidewalks, actual streets." Victoria appeared less certain. "Perhaps we should wait, make certain everything's stable first." "It's been stable for 3 days, Mother. I've ambulated around this workshop probably 100 times. I need to understand if this functions in real existence or if it only functions here. Madison's jaw was set in a manner that reminded Nathan of his own daughter when Lily had made up her mind about something. She's correct, Nathan stated. We need to test this in real conditions, but we commence small, just around the block. I'll ambulate with her, and you can follow in the vehicle in case we require a quick exit. They set out 20 minutes later, Madison moving slowly but steadily down the fractured sidewalk outside Foster's Auto Service. Nathan remained close, but not too close, providing her space to discover her own rhythm. Victoria drove behind them at walking pace, hazard lights on, appearing like she was escorting a presidential motorcade. The first obstacle was a section of sidewalk that had buckled from tree roots, creating an uneven surface that tilted at awkward angles. Madison approached it carefully, testing each step. The left knee is compensating differently, she stated, not ceasing. I can feel it adjusting to the slope. Is it painful? Nathan inquired. No, just different, like my leg is actually functioning with me instead of against me. They made it around the block, 4 streets, perhaps half a mile total, and Madison was exhausted but smiling, not the polite smile she'd worn in the beginning, but something real and bright and full of wonder. I executed it, she stated, half laughing, half weeping. I ambulated around the block without wanting to die. You executed more than that, Nathan stated. You adapted. Your body figured out how to function with the braces on uneven terrain. That's enormous. Over the next week, they increased the difficulty, longer walks, steeper inclines, a shopping mall with tile surfaces and crowds of individuals. Each expedition revealed small issues that Nathan would adjust back at the workshop. A sensor that was too sensitive to sudden movements, a contact point that rubbed during extended ambulating, an articulation that needed different resistance for uphill versus downhill. But the pain never returned. Not the sharp, constant agony that Madison had existed with for 3 years. She acquired tired. Her muscles acquired sore from the unaccustomed exercise. But it was the normal exhaustion of physical activity, not the grinding torment of a body combating itself. Lily commenced joining them on the walks, chatting with Madison about school and music and the particular frustrations of being a teenage young woman. Nathan would ambulate marginally ahead, providing them privacy, but he'd catch fragments of conversation that made him smile. So your father just decided to assist you? Lily was inquiring. Just like that. Just like that, Madison stated. I think I reminded him of your uncle. You did. He acquires this appearance sometimes when he converses about Uncle Ryan like he's still attempting to save him. Lily was quiet for a moment. But you're not Uncle Ryan, you're acquiring better. Thanks to your father. Thanks to both of you, Lily corrected. He couldn't have executed this if you weren't willing to trust him. That requires courage. On the 15th day after the modifications were complete, Madison ambulated into the workshop without her walking stick. She'd been utilizing it diminished, but this was the first time she'd arrived without it at all. Regard you, Nathan stated, grinning. Acquiring cocky. Acquiring confident, Madison corrected. There's a difference. She demonstrated by ambulating the length of the workshop and back, her gait smooth and balanced. I want to attempt something. What variety of something? Madison inhaled. I want to attempt running. The silence that followed was heavy. Victoria, who'd been checking her phone, glanced upward sharply. Absolutely not. Mother, Madison, you haven't run since you were 8 years of age. You don't understand if your body can handle it, if the braces can handle it. Which is precisely why I want to attempt it here, with Nathan supervising instead of by myself where something could actually go incorrect. Madison's voice was steady, reasonable. I've been ambulating for 2 weeks without pain. My muscles are acquiring more robust. The braces are stable. I want to understand what I'm capable of. Nathan comprehended the impulse. After years of limitation, the possibility of freedom was intoxicating. But he also comprehended the risk. Running positioned exponentially more stress on articulations and supports than ambulating. If something failed at speed, Madison could be seriously harmed. "Let's compromise," he stated. "Not running, not yet, but we could attempt jogging, very light, very slow, just to observe how the braces respond to increased impact." Victoria appeared like she wanted to argue, but Madison was already nodding. "Acceptable, yes, let's attempt that." They cleared a path through the workshop, moving equipment and vehicles to create a straight runway about 30 yards extended. Nathan established up a camera to record the test. If something went incorrect, he wanted footage to analyze. Then he walked Madison through a series of stretches, warming up muscles that hadn't been requested to run in over a decade. "Commence slow," he instructed. "Not even a jog yet, just a fast walk. I want to observe how the braces handle the increased pace before we add impact." Madison commenced ambulating, then gradually increased her speed. The braces moved smoothly, articulations adjusting to the faster rhythm. Her breathing acquired heavier, but her form remained stable. "How does it feel?" Nathan called. "Good, truly good." Madison's face was flushed with exertion and excitement. "Can I go faster? Little bit, don't push it." Madison increased her pace to something between a walk and a jog, her feet barely leaving the ground. And then, whether by intention or instinct, she pushed off harder, and her stride opened up. And for 3 steps, just 3, she was actually running. The 4th step, her left knee buckled marginally, not sufficiently to make her fall, but sufficiently to scare everyone observing. Madison immediately slowed to a walk, breathing hard. "I'm acceptable," she stated rapidly, observing the panic on her mother's face. "I'm acceptable. The knee just, it felt like the lock released a fraction too early." Nathan was already reviewing the camera footage on his phone, observing the moment in slow motion. Madison was correct. The sensor had released the lock about 50 milliseconds too soon, causing a momentary instability. At walking speed, it wouldn't have mattered. At running speed, it had nearly caused a fall. "No more running," Victoria stated flatly. "This was a mistake." "It wasn't a mistake," Nathan stated, still studying the footage. "It was information. Now we understand the sensors need recalibration for elevated impact activities. I can fix this." "You can't fix everything." Victoria's voice fractured, years of fear and frustration breaking through her controlled exterior. "You're a mechanic, not a miracle worker. My daughter could have been seriously harmed just now." "But she wasn't," Madison stated quietly. "And now we understand what needs to be adjusted. Isn't that how this functions? Test, learn, improve." "That's how it functions when you're constructing a vehicle," Victoria shot back. "Not when you're experimenting on my daughter's body." The words hung in the atmosphere like smoke. Nathan felt them land, felt the accusation behind them. She wasn't incorrect. He was experimenting, utilizing trial and error on a human being who trusted him. The fact that it had functioned so far didn't signify it would keep functioning. The fact that Madison wasn't in pain anymore didn't signify she was safe. "Perhaps we should cease here," he stated quietly. "The braces function for ambulating. That's more than you possessed 2 weeks ago. Pushing for more, pushing for running, perhaps that's excessive risk for too little gain." Madison's head snapped upward. "No, don't you dare surrender on me now." "I'm not surrendering, I'm being realistic about." "Realistic?" Madison's voice rose, anger replacing the usual careful control. "You want to converse about realistic. Realistically, I should be in a wheelchair for the rest of my existence. Realistically, I should never have ambulated again after what transpired to me. Realistically, every physician my mother's millions could purchase communicated to me to accept my limitations and be grateful for what I possessed." She was weeping now, furious tears that she didn't bother to wipe away. "You're the first person who regarded me and witnessed possibility instead of limitation. You're the first person who thought perhaps, just perhaps, I deserve more than just good sufficiently. And now you want to cease because one sensor needs recalibration." "Madison," Victoria commenced, but her daughter wasn't completed. I've devoted 11 years being careful, being realistic, being grateful for scraps, and I'm executed. I'm so completely executed with settling for diminished than what I'm capable of." Madison turned to Nathan. "You communicated to me the braces should be a tool, not a prison. Well, right now they're a tool that lets me ambulate. I want them to be a tool that lets me run. I want them to be a tool that lets me exist without constantly wondering what I'm missing." The workshop was silent, except for the hum of the fluorescent lights and Madison's ragged breathing. Nathan regarded this young woman who'd been through more in her 19 years than most individuals experienced in a lifetime, who'd been knocked down by fate and expensive medical equipment and her own body, and who was still combating for more. He thought about Ryan, who'd combated until the very end, not for a cure, but simply for dignity, for the chance to exist on his own terms instead of the terms his injury dictated. He thought about Lily, who'd learned from observing her uncle die that sometimes the bravest aspect you could execute was refuse to accept the limits other individuals set for you. "Acceptable," Nathan stated. "We keep going, but we're intelligent about it. I recalibrate the sensors. We test everything thoroughly, and we don't attempt running again until I'm absolutely certain the braces can handle it." Madison nodded, wiping her eyes. "Gratitude." Victoria appeared like she wanted to argue, but she just closed her eyes and accepted a long breath. "I can't lose you," she stated finally. "You're all I possess." "Nothing's going to transpire, Mother. Nathan won't let it." Madison's certainty was absolute, the kind of faith that was both humbling and terrifying. The sensor recalibration required 3 days. Nathan didn't just adjust the existing thresholds. He completely rewrote the response protocols, creating different modes for different activities. Ambulating mode, where the sensors prioritized smooth transitions and energy efficiency. Athletic mode, where they prioritized stability and impact absorption. Emergency mode, where they locked immediately if they detected a fall pattern. He tested each mode exhaustively on his rig, running thousands of simulated cycles, stress testing the articulations under conditions that mimicked running, jumping, even falling. Lily would come home from school to discover the workshop filled with the rhythmic clicking of articulations engaging and releasing, her father hunched over his laptop, adjusting code and observing data streams. "You understand you're kind of obsessed, correct?" she stated one evening. "I prefer dedicated," Nathan replied, not glancing away from his screen. "Father, when was the final time you ate something that wasn't delivered in a cardboard container?" He had to think about it. "Tuesday. It's Friday. Come on, I'm making actual food." Lily physically pulled him away from his workstation. "Madison needs you functional, not collapsed from malnutrition." Over dinner, pasta that Lily had learned to make from video tutorials, she inquired the question Nathan had been avoiding. "What transpires after this? After Madison can run, what do you signify?" "I signify you've basically invented a better mobility brace. What transpires when other individuals discover out, when other families like Madison's want your assistance?" Nathan hadn't thought that far ahead. He'd been so concentrated on keeping his commitment on assisting one person that he hadn't considered the implications. "I don't understand. I'm not set up for that. I'm a mechanic, not a medical device manufacturer." "Perhaps you should be both," Lily stated. "Uncle Ryan would have loved something like what you made for Madison. How many other individuals are out there right now managing the identical pain, the identical limitations, because nobody's thought to question whether their equipment is actually assisting them?" It was a good question, a dangerous question, because once Nathan commenced thinking about it, he couldn't cease. On day 18, Madison returned to attempt the recalibrated braces. Nathan had her ambulate first, testing the normal mode, then gradually transition to the athletic setting. The difference was subtle but significant. The articulations responded faster, locked more firmly, provided better stability during the impact phase of each step. "How does it feel?" Nathan inquired. "Powerful," Madison stated, a slow smile spreading across her face. Like the braces are actually supporting me instead of just tolerating me. They devoted an hour having her ambulate at various speeds, testing the transitions between modes, making certain everything felt natural. Then, when Nathan was satisfied, he established up the runway again. Identical as before, he instructed. Commence slow, work up gradually, but this time if you feel anything incorrect, any instability, any pain, anything, you cease immediately. Commit me. I commit. Madison commenced ambulating, then transitioned to a fast walk, then a gentle jog. The braces moved perfectly, absorbing impact, maintaining stability. Her breathing was controlled, her form steady. And then she pushed off harder and she was running, truly running, her feet pounding against the concrete surface of the workshop, 10 yards, 20, 30. She reached the end of the runway, turned and ran back. When she finally ceased, her face was radiant with joy and tears and disbelief. I executed it, she gasped. I actually ran. Victoria was weeping openly now, all her careful control abandoned. She pulled Madison into an embrace, both of them laughing and sobbing. Nathan stood back, checking the camera footage one more time to make certain the braces had performed correctly, that there were no warning indications he'd missed. Everything appeared good, better than good, perfect. Lily, who'd come to observe, sidled up next to him. You executed it, Father. We'll observe. This was just one test. We need to make certain it's repeatable, that the braces hold up over time. Father, you executed it. Let yourself feel good about it for like 5 seconds. So Nathan did. He observed Madison and Victoria celebrate, observed this young woman who'd been communicated she'd never ambulate again, now jumping up and down with excitement, and he let himself feel the satisfaction of a job well executed. But that satisfaction lasted precisely 2 days. The letter arrived at the workshop on a Tuesday morning, delivered by courier, heavy paper, expensive letterhead, the kind of official document that always signified trouble. Nathan opened it standing in the parking property, squinting against the morning sun. It was from Wellington Medical Technologies, the company that had manufactured Madison's original braces. They were aware that he had modified their proprietary medical apparatus without authorization. They were aware that he possessed no medical credentials or engineering certifications. They were aware that he was operating outside the bounds of FDA regulations regarding medical apparatus modification. They wanted him to cease all activities related to the braces immediately. They wanted the modified apparatus returned to them for inspection. And they were considering legal action for intellectual property theft, unauthorized medical practice, and reckless endangerment. Nathan read the letter 3 times, his stomach sinking further with each pass. He'd been so concentrated on assisting Madison that he hadn't thought about the legal implications. He'd modified a medical apparatus worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. He'd effectively practiced medicine without a license. And now a major corporation with unlimited legal resources wanted to shut him down. He called Victoria. She answered on the first ring. We acquired one too, she stated before he could speak. They're threatening to prosecute me for permitting unauthorized modification of medical equipment. They're threatening to report Madison's case to the medical board as an example of what transpires when individuals circumvent proper channels. I'm sorry, Nathan stated. I should have thought about this. Should have understood there would be consequences. Don't apologize. You gave my daughter her existence back. I'll manage Wellington Medical. Her voice assumed on that steel edge Nathan had detected the first day they met. They're not going to intimidate us into silence. But it wasn't just Wellington Medical. Over the next week, Nathan received letters from medical societies, disability advocacy groups, even the state medical board. Some were concerned about patient safety. Some were worried about precedent. Some were just angry that an outsider had succeeded where certified professionals had failed. The pressure was intense and constant. Nathan's phone rang at all hours. Reporters wanting interviews, attorneys offering representation, disability rights activists who thought he was either a hero or a menace depending on their perspective. He ceased answering calls from numbers he didn't recognize. Lily observed her father stress himself into exhaustion and finally positioned her foot down. You need to converse to someone who understands about this stuff. Like who? An attorney. Like Madison. She's the one who's actually affected by all this. What does she want to execute? Nathan realized he'd been so preoccupied defending himself that he hadn't inquired the one person whose opinion actually mattered. He called Madison that evening. I was wondering when you'd reach out, she stated. Mother communicated to me about the letters about Wellington attempting to shut you down. I'm sorry, this is my fault. I should have been more careful, should have gone through proper channels. Nathan, cease. There are no proper channels for what you executed. That's the whole difficulty. Madison's voice was firm. The system is designed to protect companies like Wellington, not patients like me. They devoted 3 years selling me braces that caused me pain, and nobody questioned it because they possessed the correct certifications and the correct credentials. You fixed me in 3 weeks because you actually listened. That doesn't alter the fact that I broke rules, important rules. Probably rules that needed breaking, Madison stated. I've been thinking about this, about what transpires next, and I want a combat. Combat how? Go public, communicate my story. Display the world what you executed and why it mattered. Wellington wants to shut us down quietly, make this go away before anyone inquires uncomfortable questions about why their expensive equipment was causing harm. I state we make it loud. We make it so loud they can't ignore it. Nathan's first instinct was to refuse. He didn't want attention. He didn't want to be a crusader or a symbol. He just wanted to assist one person, keep a commitment to his dead brother. But then he thought about Lily's question. How many other individuals were out there suffering because nobody questioned the system? If we execute this, he stated slowly, there's no going back. Wellington will come at us with everything they possess. Other companies will too. We could lose badly. I've already lost, Madison stated. I lost 11 years of my existence to pain and limitation. The worst aspect they can execute to me now is attempt to assume away what you gave back. And I won't let that transpire without a combat. The decision was made. They would go public, communicate Madison's story, and let the world decide whether what Nathan had executed was reckless endangerment or necessary innovation. But first, they needed proof, real scientific proof that the modifications functioned. And for that, they needed someone with credentials that couldn't be dismissed. That's when Victoria suggested Dr. Patricia Sullivan. Dr. Patricia Sullivan was a professor of biomedical engineering at Stanford, a woman whose research on adaptive prosthetics had earned her international recognition and a reputation for challenging conventional thinking. She was also, according to Victoria's research, someone who'd been publicly critical of medical apparatus manufacturers prioritizing profit over patient outcomes. She's our optimal chance, Victoria stated, displaying Nathan articles Dr. Sullivan had written about innovation barriers in the medical apparatus industry. If anyone will comprehend what you executed and why it matters, it's her. And if she thinks I'm a reckless idiot who acquired lucky, Nathan inquired. Then we're no worse off than we are presently, Victoria stated. Her jaw was set. But I don't think she will. I think she'll observe what I observe, someone who solved a difficulty everyone else ignored because they were too invested in the existing system. Victoria made the call that afternoon. Nathan listened to one side of the conversation, attempting to gauge Dr. Sullivan's reaction from Victoria's carefully neutral responses. When Victoria finally disconnected, she was smiling. She'll observe us tomorrow at her laboratory. She wants to examine Madison and review your modifications. Victoria paused. She also stated she's been waiting for someone to challenge Wellington for years. Apparently, they've been blocking innovation in mobility apparatus to protect their market share. The drive to Stanford the next morning felt surreal. Nathan followed Victoria's vehicle north on the highway, Lily riding alongside because she'd refused to miss this. Madison sat in the backseat of her mother's vehicle, nervous energy radiating off her. Dr. Patricia Sullivan met them in her laboratory, a sprawling space filled with equipment Nathan couldn't begin to identify. She was in her early 50s with graying hair pulled back and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She shook Nathan's hand with a grip that suggested she didn't suffer fools. "Mr. Foster, I've read the documentation Ms. Pierce transmitted over. Impressive labor for someone without formal engineering training." Her tone was neutral, giving nothing away. "Gratitude." "I think," Nathan stated, "it wasn't entirely a compliment. Your methods were unorthodox. Your safety protocols were practically non-existent, and you assumed risks that could have resulted in serious injury." Dr. Sullivan turned to Madison. "But you're ambulating without pain for the first time in years, so clearly something went very correct. I want to comprehend what." She devoted the next 3 hours positioning Madison through a battery of tests. Gait analysis on a specialized treadmill, equipped with sensors that measured everything from articulation angles to pressure distribution, range of motion assessments, strength evaluations. She examined the modified braces with the kind of meticulous attention Nathan recognized from his own labor, obtaining measurements, testing articulations, reviewing every modification he'd made. Lily and Nathan sat on stools near the back of the laboratory, observing in silence. At one point, Lily leaned over and whispered, "She's either going to call you a genius or report you to every regulatory agency in California." "Could be both," Nathan muttered. Finally, Dr. Sullivan had Madison rest while she reviewed the data on her computer. The silence stretched out, broken only by the hum of equipment and the clicking of keys. Victoria stood behind Dr. Sullivan's shoulder, attempting to read the screens, her anxiety barely controlled. "Well," Dr. Sullivan stated finally, turning to face them. "This is extraordinary." The word hung in the atmosphere. Nathan wasn't certain if extraordinary was good or bad in this context. "The modifications you made," Dr. Sullivan continued regarding Nathan, "demonstrate an intuitive comprehension of biomechanics that most of my graduate students would struggle to achieve. You identified the core difficulty, that the original braces were designed for a theoretical patient rather than Madison specifically, and you solved it utilizing first principles engineering. No unnecessary complexity, no overthinking, just elegant problem solving." "So you're stating he was correct?" Victoria inquired. "I'm stating he was brilliant." Dr. Sullivan pulled up a comparison on her screen, Madison's gait before and after the modifications. "Regard this." The original braces compelled Madison's body into an unnatural alignment, causing chronic stress on her hips and spine. Mr. Foster's modifications labor with her body's natural compensation patterns. The result is a 63% reduction in articulation stress and a 47% improvement in energy efficiency. These aren't marginal gains. This is transformative. Madison's hand discovered her mother's. Both women were weeping again, but this time it was relief rather than fear. "But," Dr. Sullivan added, and Nathan's heart sank at that word, "from a regulatory standpoint, what you executed was completely illegal. You modified a Class II medical apparatus without authorization. You practiced medicine without a license. You conducted human trials without oversight or approval. Any one of those violations could result in serious legal consequences." "I understand," Nathan stated quietly. "I understood it was risky, but Madison was in pain and I thought I could assist. And you did assist. That's the difficulty Wellington Medical is facing right now. They can't argue that your modifications were harmful because Madison is demonstrably better. So instead, they're arguing that you broke rules, which you did, and that breaking rules is dangerous, which it can be. Dr. Sullivan stood up, pacing. The medical apparatus industry possesses legitimate reasons for regulation. We don't want random individuals making modifications to equipment that keeps individuals alive. But the system has become so rigid that it stifles innovation and protects corporate interests over patient welfare. So what do we execute? Lily inquired. She'd been quiet until now, but her voice was steady. Just let them shut my father down. Let them assume away Madison's braces and position her back in the ones that harmed her. Dr. Sullivan smiled, and it wasn't a friendly expression. It was the smile of someone about to select a combat. We don't let them execute anything. We go on the offensive. We document everything, publish the results, and compel a conversation about patient-centered innovation versus corporate-controlled healthcare. You'd be willing to assist us? Victoria inquired carefully. Publicly. Even understanding it could damage your reputation. Ms. Pierce, I've devoted 20 years researching how to make better mobility apparatus. I've published dozens of papers. I've trained hundreds of students. And in all that time, I've observed companies like Wellington Block Innovations that could assist individuals because those innovations threaten their profit margins. Dr. Sullivan's voice was hard now. Your mechanics solved in 3 weeks what the medical establishment has been failing to solve for decades. If I don't stand up for that, what's the point of any of my labor? The plan came together over the next few hours. Dr. Sullivan would conduct a full analysis of Madison's case, documenting the difficulties with the original braces and the improvements from Nathan's modifications. She'd present the findings in a paper submitted to a major medical journal, with Madison and Nathan listed as co-authors. And she'd testify on their behalf if Wellington Medical followed through on their legal threats. It won't be easy, Dr. Sullivan warned. Wellington possesses attorneys, money, and influence. They'll attack your credentials, question your motives, attempt to paint you as a dangerous amateur playing with individuals' existences. Let them attempt, Madison stated. Her voice was quiet but absolutely certain. I'll communicate anyone who listens what those braces executed to me and what Nathan's modifications gave me back. They departed Stanford as the sun was setting. Lily fell asleep in the passenger seat, exhausted from the emotional intensity of the day. Nathan drove in silence, processing everything that had transpired. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Gratitude for everything, for not surrendering. He didn't understand how to respond to that, so he just transmitted back a thumbs up and concentrated on the road. The media attention commenced 3 days later when Dr. Sullivan released a preliminary statement to the press about her findings. The story was irresistible. Billionaire's daughter healed by humble mechanic. Medical establishment threatened by outsider innovation. David versus Goliath with mobility braces instead of slingshots. Nathan's phone exploded with interview requests. Local news, national news, medical journals, disability advocacy groups. Everyone wanted a component of the story. He turned them all down at first, uncomfortable with the attention. But Victoria convinced him that silence would let Wellington control the narrative. We need to communicate your side, she insisted. Display individuals who you are and why you executed this. So Nathan agreed to one interview with a local San Diego station that had covered community stories in his neighborhood for years. The reporter, Jennifer Blake, met him at the workshop on a Wednesday afternoon, her cameraman establishing up shots of the workspace where the miracle had transpired. Communicate me why you executed this, Jennifer stated once they were recording. You're not a physician. You're not an engineer. Why assume the risk? Nathan thought about all the polished answers he could give, all the manners he could make himself sound noble or heroic. But he'd never been good at pretense. My brother was paralyzed, he stated simply. I observed him suffer for 8 years with equipment that was supposed to assist, but mostly just reminded him of everything he'd lost. When I witnessed Madison managing the identical aspect, I couldn't walk away. I made a commitment to my brother before he died that I'd assist if I ever could. This was my chance to keep that commitment. The interview aired that evening. By morning, it had been acquired by national outlets. Nathan woke to discover his workshop surrounded by news vans and reporters shouting questions. He called Lily to warn her there might be media at her school, then texted Victoria for advice on how to handle the circus his existence had become. Her response was immediate. "Don't converse to anyone else. We're scheduling a press conference for tomorrow." Madison wants to speak. The press conference was held at a hotel in downtown San Diego, a chamber that could hold perhaps 200 individuals but felt packed with 300 crammed inside. Victoria had arranged everything: the podium, the microphones, the backdrop with a simple message: patient care over corporate profit. Madison sat at the table in her modified braces, Nathan on one side and Dr. Sullivan on the other. Victoria stood marginally behind, one hand on her daughter's shoulder. The chamber was hot with bodies and camera lights, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. Madison's prepared statement was simple and devastating. She described 11 years of pain, of physicians who communicated her it was normal, of expensive equipment that made her feel like a prisoner in her own body. She described meeting Nathan, his careful questions, his refusal to accept that suffering was inevitable. And she described the moment she ambulated without pain for the first time, the moment she ran, the pure joy of discovering her body could labor with her instead of against her. "Wellington Medical is threatening legal action," Madison stated, her voice steady despite the emotion behind it. "They state Mr. Foster broke rules. They state he's not qualified. They state what he executed was dangerous." She paused. "But I'm sitting here in braces that don't harm me. I'm sitting here able to ambulate and run and exist my existence. And Wellington wants to call that dangerous. They want to assume this away from me because Nathan doesn't possess the correct pieces of paper on his wall." The chamber erupted in questions. Madison fielded them with impressive composure, never defensive, always concentrating on the facts of her experience. Dr. Sullivan provided the scientific credibility, explaining the biomechanics, the improvements, the potential for this approach to assist others. Nathan stated as little as possible, uncomfortable with being called a hero or an innovator. He was just a mechanic who'd kept a commitment. But the public reaction was overwhelmingly supportive. Social media ignited with Madison's story. Disability rights advocates praised her courage. Other patients commenced coming forward with their own stories of medical equipment that caused more harm than good. The narrative Wellington had hoped to control was slipping away from them. Then came the backlash. Medical societies issued statements about the dangers of unlicensed practice. Wellington released their own press conference featuring physicians who warned about the risks of modifications made without proper testing or oversight. They trotted out worst-case scenarios, equipment failures, injuries, deaths, all the terrible aspects that could transpire when amateurs play physician. "He acquired lucky," one orthopedic surgeon stated on a morning talk show. "This time it functioned out, but for every success story like Madison Pierce, there could be 10 disasters we never detect about. The regulations exist for a reason." The uncertainty was exhausting. Nathan discovered himself second-guessing everything, lying awake at night, wondering if the surgeon was correct. What if he had just acquired lucky? What if the next person he attempted to assist acquired harmed? What if his modifications failed and Madison concluded up worse than before? Lily discovered him in the workshop at 2 in the morning, staring at Madison's braces like they held answers to questions he hadn't figured out how to inquire yet. "Can't sleep," she stated, pulling up a stool beside him. "Wondering if I made a mistake, not in assisting Madison in going public with it. Perhaps I should have just fixed her braces and departed it at that. And let Wellington keep selling equipment that harms individuals. Let other families suffer because nobody wants to challenge the system. Lily shook her head. Father, I understand this is scary, but you executed something important. You proved that the system isn't always correct, that sometimes the individuals with the credentials are incorrect, and the individuals with the heart are correct. Your mother would have detested this, Nathan stated. She always stated I assumed excessive risks, cared excessively much about other individuals' difficulties. Mother also stated you possessed the biggest heart of anyone she'd ever encountered. Lily's voice was gentle. She understood you couldn't observe someone suffering and just pass by. That's why she loved you. Nathan pulled his daughter close, grateful for her wisdom and her faith in him. When did you acquire so intelligent? I've always been intelligent. You've just been too preoccupied saving individuals to notice. The federal hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later in Washington, D.C. A preliminary review to determine if Nathan's actions warranted prosecution. Victoria hired attorneys, expensive ones who specialized in medical apparatus litigation. They prepped Nathan on what to state, how to present himself, how to appear competent but not arrogant, knowledgeable but not presumptuous. Just be yourself, one attorney advised. You're a sympathetic figure, the working-class hero who assisted someone in need. Don't attempt to be something you're not. The night before they flew to Washington, Nathan sat in his workshop one final time, regarding the space where everything had commenced. The old seats, the coffee maker, the scattered tools and equipment. This was who he was, a mechanic in a run-down workshop attempting to fix aspects that were broken. He thought about Ryan, about the commitment made in a hospital chamber 5 years ago. He thought about Madison, about the trust she'd positioned in him when she possessed every reason to be skeptical. He thought about Lily, observing her father assume a stand for what he believed in despite the risks. Whatever transpired tomorrow, he'd kept his commitments. That had to count for something. The hearing chamber was smaller than Nathan expected, formal and cold, with wood paneling and the seal of some federal agency he didn't recognize on the wall. A panel of 5 individuals sat at a raised table, physicians, attorneys, bureaucrats, all of them regarding Nathan like he was a particularly interesting specimen under a microscope. The Wellington medical attorneys went first, laying out their case with precision and barely concealed contempt. Nathan had violated federal regulations. Possessed no credentials. He had conducted medical procedures without oversight. He represented a dangerous precedent that could undermine public safety and trust in the medical apparatus industry. If we permit mechanics to modify medical equipment based on intuition, the lead attorney argued, we open the entrance to chaos. Today it's Mr. Foster making braces. Tomorrow it's someone performing surgery in their workshop. Where does it conclude? Then it was Dr. Sullivan's turn. She presented her analysis with the kind of clinical precision that came from decades of academic rigor. She displayed the data, explained the improvements, demonstrated precisely why Nathan's modifications functioned and why the original braces had failed. The question before you, she stated to the panel, is not whether Mr. Foster broke rules. He did. The question is whether those rules are serving patients or protecting corporate interests, because the evidence suggests that Wellington Medical understood their braces were causing difficulties and executed nothing because fixing the difficulties would have cost them money and market share. That acquired a reaction. The Wellington attorneys objected, demanding proof. Dr. Sullivan calmly presented internal emails she'd obtained through her research connections, communications between Wellington engineers discussing the precise issues Nathan had identified and deciding that redesigning the braces wasn't cost-effective. The chamber went very quiet. Finally, it was Madison's turn to speak. She wheeled to the microphone, She'd chosen to utilize her seat for the hearing, wanting the panel to observe what her existence had been like before, and communicated her story one more time. But this time, she added something new. "I want to display you something," she stated. And then, with Victoria's assistance, she stood up, removed herself from the wheelchair, and ambulated across the hearing chamber. Not carefully, not tentatively, but with confidence and strength. She ambulated to the panel's table, turned, and ambulated back. "This is what Nathan Foster gave me," she stated, her voice breaking. "This is what your regulations almost prevented. I'm not inquiring you to discard all the rules. I'm inquiring you to recall that the rules exist to assist individuals, not to protect companies. And when the rules cease assisting and commence harming, perhaps it's time to alter the rules." The panel deliberated for 2 hours. Nathan sat in the hallway with Victoria, Lily, Madison, and Dr. Sullivan, nobody speaking, everyone lost in their own thoughts about what would transpire if the decision went against them. When they were called back in, the chairwoman of the panel spoke. "We've reached a determination. Mr. Foster, you violated several federal regulations regarding medical apparatus modification. Under normal circumstances, this would result in fines and possibly criminal charges." Nathan's heart sank. This was it, the conclusion. "However," the chairwoman continued, "we also discover that your modifications demonstrably improved patient outcomes and that the original medical apparatus was causing harm that the manufacturer failed to address despite being aware of the difficulty. Furthermore, Dr. Sullivan's testimony suggests that current regulations may be inhibiting patient-centered innovation." She regarded directly at Nathan. "We're issuing a special provisional license that will permit you to continue laboring on mobility apparatus under Dr. Sullivan's supervision. You'll need to complete certification courses in biomedical engineering and safety protocols. You'll be subject to regular inspections and audits, and any future modifications must be documented and reviewed by a qualified medical professional before implementation. But we're not going to punish you for assisting someone when the system failed them." The chamber erupted. Victoria grabbed Nathan's hand. Madison was weeping. Lily was grinning like she just won the lottery. Even the attorneys appeared surprised. It wasn't everything. It wasn't complete vindication, but it was sufficient. It was an entrance opening, a possibility, a chance to keep assisting individuals without destroying his existence in the process. Outside the hearing chamber, reporters swarmed them with questions. This time, Nathan didn't hide. He stood beside Madison and answered honestly, conversing about his brother, about commitments kept, about the importance of listening to patients instead of just following protocols. That night back in their hotel, Victoria ordered chamber service for everyone, a celebration that felt both earned and fragile. They ate and conversed and laughed, the tension of the past weeks finally releasing. "What transpires now?" Madison inquired. "You're officially going to execute this? Assist other individuals?" Nathan regarded Dr. Sullivan, who nodded encouragingly. "I suppose so. If individuals want my assistance and Dr. Sullivan thinks I won't terminate anyone, we'll observe what we can execute." "We'll execute more than observe," Dr. Sullivan stated. "We're going to alter how this industry thinks about patient care, commencing with you acquiring those certifications so this provisional license becomes permanent." Lily raised her beverage in a toast. "To Nathan Foster, the world's most overqualified mechanic." They all drank to that, even as Nathan wondered what he'd gotten himself into and whether he was prepared for what came next. But prepared or not, what came next arrived fast and relentless. The hearing had made national news, and within days Nathan's phone was flooded with messages from families desperate for assistance. Parents whose children struggled with braces that didn't fit correctly. Veterans whose prosthetics caused chronic pain. Individuals who'd been communicated to accept their limitations because that's just how the equipment functioned. Nathan read every message. his heart breaking a little more with each one. A mother in Ohio whose 7-year-old daughter wept every morning when positioning on her leg braces. A former Marine in Texas who'd surrendered on his prosthetic arm because it caused more difficulties than it solved. A teenager in Oregon who'd ceased going to school because her wheelchair was so uncomfortable she couldn't sit through a full day of classes. "I can't assist all these individuals," he communicated Dr. Sullivan during one of their phone calls. "I don't possess the resources, the space, the knowledge." "Then we construct the resources," Dr. Sullivan interrupted. "Nathan, you've proven the concept. Now we need to scale it." That signifies funding, facilities, and training others to execute what you execute. Scaling signified money, and money signified Victoria Pierce. She'd been quietly laboring on something in the background, and 2 weeks after the hearing, she invited Nathan to lunch at a restaurant so expensive he felt underdressed in his cleanest shirt and newest jeans. "I want to fund a laboratory," Victoria stated without preamble once they'd ordered. "A proper facility where you can labor on mobility apparatus under Dr. Sullivan's supervision. Equipment, materials, staff, whatever you require." Nathan stared at her. "That would cost millions." "I'm aware." Victoria's expression was calm, businesslike. "I've devoted the last 11 years throwing money at the medical establishment attempting to purchase a solution for Madison's pain. You gave me that solution for the price of some modified components and your time. This is me investing in the correct approach. I don't understand how to run a laboratory. I barely understand how to run my workshop. You won't be running it alone. Dr. Sullivan has agreed to come on as Chief Scientific Officer. I'll handle the business side. You'll execute what you execute optimal, fix aspects that everyone else has surrendered on." Victoria leaned forward. "Nathan, there are thousands of individuals like Madison out there, perhaps tens of thousands. Individuals suffering because the equipment that's supposed to assist them was designed by engineers who never inquired what the patients actually required. You can't assist all of them personally, but you can construct something that will." The enormity of it was terrifying. Nathan had never wanted to be more than a mechanic with a workshop and sufficient labor to pay his bills. Now Victoria was offering him a chance to construct something that could alter existences on a scale he couldn't quite comprehend. "I need to think about it," he stated. "Of course, but don't think too extended. Every day we wait is another day someone's in pain that could be prevented." Nathan drove home in a daze, Victoria's offer running circles in his head. He discovered Lily executing homework at the kitchen table, her headphones on, completely absorbed. She glanced upward when he dropped his keys on the counter. "How was lunch with the billionaire?" "Complicated." Nathan grabbed a beverage from the refrigerator and sat across from her. "She wants to fund a whole laboratory, hire staff, turn this into a real operation." Lily's eyes widened. "That's amazing. Why do you appear like someone died?" "Because I don't understand if I can execute this. Running a laboratory, managing individuals, being responsible for patients. That's not me, Lily. I fix vehicles. I labor alone. I appreciate my quiet existence." "Did you appreciate it?" Lily inquired softly. "Before Madison, before all this, because from where I was sitting, you appeared like you were just going through the motions, laboring, coming home, existing. Uncle Ryan's death kind of broke something in you, and I don't think you've been truly alive since then." Her words struck harder than Nathan expected. Had he just been existing, going through the routine of existence without truly existing it? "Assisting Madison brought you back," Lily continued. "I witnessed it. You possessed purpose again. You cared about something beyond just acquiring through the day. And yeah, this is scary and complicated and manner bigger than anything you've executed before. But Father, you're good at this. You're truly, truly good at observing what other individuals miss and fixing what everyone else states is unfixable. Don't waste that because you're scared. Nathan regarded his daughter, this 14-year-old kid who somehow possessed the wisdom of someone twice her age, and felt pride and gratitude wash over him. "When did you acquire so intelligent? I keep communicating you I've always been intelligent. You just forget sometimes." She grinned. "So are you going to execute it?" "I think I have to. Uncle Ryan would never forgive me if I didn't." The next morning, Nathan called Victoria and accepted her offer. Within a week, she'd purchased a building in a light industrial area of San Diego, nothing fancy, but spacious and well-lit with chamber for equipment and workstations. Dr. Sullivan flew down to assist with setup, bringing an enthusiasm that made Nathan feel marginally diminished, terrified about the whole aspect. "We'll commence small," Dr. Sullivan stated, walking through the empty space with a measuring tape and a notebook. "Basic tools, a few workstations, materials, storage. As we prove the concept and acquire more funding, we expand. But the core principle remains identical. Listen to patients, comprehend their actual needs, design solutions that labor with their bodies instead of against them." They named it Foster Mobility Laboratory, though Nathan argued unsuccessfully for something that didn't possess his name in it. Victoria insisted that his name carried weight after the hearing, that individuals would trust a location named after the mechanic who'd assisted her daughter when no one else could. The build-out required 6 weeks. During that time, Nathan commenced his certification courses in biomedical engineering, studying at night after laboring at the workshop during the day. The material was dense and technical, full of concepts he had to wrestle with. But Dr. Sullivan was patient in explaining aspects, and Nathan discovered he possessed a talent for the practical applications, even if the theory sometimes escaped him. Lily assisted where she could, quizzing him on terminology and biomechanics, turning his study sessions into competitions to observe who could recall more details. It was good having her involved, observing her assume pride in what her father was constructing. Madison became a fixture at the laboratory during setup, offering input on design from a patient's perspective. She tested every component of equipment, every workstation height, every element of the space to make certain it would be accessible and welcoming to individuals with mobility challenges. "Most medical facilities are designed for able-bodied individuals," she explained to Nathan one afternoon. "Tall counters, narrow entrances, furniture that's hard to acquire in and out of. If we're going to assist individuals, we need to make certain they feel comfortable here." Her insights were invaluable, catching aspects Nathan and Dr. Sullivan would never have considered. The result was a space that felt diminished like a medical facility and more like a workshop, functional and welcoming, with natural light and comfortable seating and an overall atmosphere that stated, "You're safe here." The first official patient arrived 3 days after the laboratory opened. Benjamin Turner was a 12-year-old boy with cerebral palsy, his leg braces causing pain similar to what Madison had experienced. His mother had driven 6 hours from Los Angeles after observing Madison's story on the news. "The physicians state the pain is normal," Mrs. Turner explained, her hand on her son's shoulder. "They state he needs to strengthen his muscles, that he's not attempting hard sufficiently. But I observe him struggle every day, and I understand something's incorrect." Nathan examined Benjamin's braces utilizing the identical methodical approach he'd utilized with Madison. The difficulties were different. Benjamin's braces were too rigid, not permitting for the natural variation in his movements, compelling his body into positions it couldn't comfortably maintain. But the underlying issue was identical, equipment designed for a theoretical patient rather than the actual human wearing it. "I think we can assist," Nathan stated, "but it's going to require some time. I'll need to obtain detailed measurements, comprehend how Benjamin moves, figure out what adjustments will function optimal for him specifically." The relief on Mrs. Turner's face was nearly painful to witness. "How much will it cost? We don't possess a lot of money." "Nothing," Victoria stated, appearing from the office area. She'd been laboring there most mornings, handling the administrative side of the operation. "The laboratory is funded. We're not here to make money off individuals' pain." Mrs. Turner commenced weeping, and Benjamin embraced his mother while Nathan and Victoria gave them privacy. Once they'd composed themselves, Nathan acquired to labor, devoting 3 hours documenting everything about Benjamin's braces and his body's relationship to them. The modifications required a week. Nathan labored under Dr. Sullivan's supervision, documenting every step, every decision, every test. When Benjamin returned to attempt the adjusted braces, his first steps were tentative but increasingly confident. "It doesn't hurt," he stated, wonder in his voice. "Mother, it doesn't hurt." He ambulated around the laboratory, then broke into an awkward run, laughing with pure joy. His mother wept again, but these were tears of relief and gratitude. Observing them, Nathan felt that identical sense of purpose Emma had conversed about, the feeling that what he was executing mattered in a manner that transcended just earning a living. Word spread rapidly after that. More families came, each with their own stories of pain and frustration and equipment that didn't function correctly. Nathan labored on each case methodically, learning from every patient, refining his approach. Dr. Sullivan provided scientific oversight and assisted him comprehend the underlying principles behind what his intuition was communicating him. Madison became an unofficial patient advocate, conversing to families, sharing her own story, assisting individuals comprehend what to expect from the process. She possessed a gift for it, a manner of connecting with individuals who were managing challenges she comprehended intimately. "You should make this official," Victoria communicated her daughter one evening. "Not just volunteering here, but actually laboring. You're good with individuals, good at explaining complex medical stuff in manners they can comprehend." Madison considered it. She'd been obtaining online classes, laboring toward a degree in something she hadn't quite figured out yet. "You think I could execute it, actually labor here?" "I think you're executing it already," Nathan stated. "We just need to make it official and remunerate you for it." So Madison joined the team as patient coordinator, a role that rapidly expanded to include advocacy, education, and outreach. She commenced a blog documenting her journey and the laboratory's labor, attracting attention from media outlets and disability rights organizations. Her voice, authentic, vulnerable, and unafraid to challenge the medical establishment, resonated with individuals who'd felt unheard for years. 6 months after the laboratory opened, they'd assisted 47 patients. Not a massive number in the grand scheme of aspects, but 47 individuals who were in diminished pain, who could move more freely, who possessed a little more dignity and independence in their existences. Each one felt like keeping the commitment Nathan had made to Ryan. Then came the call that altered everything again. A representative from the National Institutes of Health wanted to visit the laboratory to observe what they were executing and discuss potential funding for a larger study. Apparently, Madison's blog and the media coverage had caught the attention of individuals who controlled serious research money. "This could be massive," Dr. Sullivan stated, pacing excitedly in her small office. "Federal funding signifies legitimacy. It signifies we could expand, hire more individuals, assist more patients. It signifies we could actually alter how the industry approaches mobility apparatus." But it also signified scrutiny. The NIH didn't distribute grants to operations that couldn't prove rigorous methodology and reproducible results. They'd need documentation, data, protocols, all the aspects Nathan had been learning but wasn't entirely comfortable with yet. The NIH representatives arrived on a Tuesday morning, Three individuals in business casual carrying tablets and notebooks, regarding around the laboratory with expressions Nathan couldn't quite read. They interviewed him, Dr. Sullivan, and Madison. They examined case files, reviewed modifications, inquired pointed questions about safety protocols and outcome measurements. After 4 hours, the lead representative, Dr. Catherine Morris, sat down with the core team. "I'll be honest. This is unusual. We don't typically fund operations run by someone without traditional credentials, but your outcomes are undeniable. The patient satisfaction data is extraordinary, and Dr. Sullivan's involvement gives us confidence in the scientific rigor." "But," Nathan prompted, detecting the hesitation in her voice, "but we need more documentation, formal studies comparing your modified apparatus to standard equipment, peer-reviewed publications. Evidence that this approach functions consistently across different patient populations." Dr. Morris paused. "If you can provide that, we're prepared to fund a 5-year study that could transform how mobility apparatus are designed and prescribed." The amount she mentioned made Nathan's head spin. It was sufficient to expand the laboratory significantly, hire additional staff, assist hundreds or even thousands of individuals. But it also signified committing to the academic side of aspects, the research, the publications, the bureaucracy that Nathan had devoted his whole existence avoiding. "Can we possess some time to discuss it?" Dr. Sullivan inquired. "Of course, assume a week, converse it over, but comprehend this opportunity won't come around again. The NIH is interested presently because you're novel and acquiring attention. That window will close eventually." After they departed, Nathan sat in his office, a small chamber that still felt too official for someone who devoted his career in a workshop and attempted to process what had just transpired. Lily ceased by after school, discovering him staring at spreadsheets he didn't entirely comprehend. "Heavy thoughts?" she inquired, dropping her backpack. "Existence-altering thoughts. The NIH wants to fund us, like serious money, sufficient to truly construct something significant. That's amazing." "Why do you appear so worried?" "Because it signifies going all in on this. No more workshop labor. No more just being a mechanic who assists individuals on the side. This would be my whole existence." Nathan rubbed his face. "What if I'm not intelligent sufficiently? What if I can't handle the academic stuff, the research protocols, all the aspects that come with federal funding?" Lily sat on the edge of his desk. "Father, you've been not intelligent sufficient your whole existence according to the system. No college degree, no formal training, just a guy who fixes aspects. And somehow you figured out what teams of physicians and engineers couldn't. Perhaps intelligence isn't about degrees and credentials. Perhaps it's about actually paying attention to what matters." Her faith in him was humbling and terrifying in equal measure. "Your mother would understand what to execute. She was always better at the big decisions. Mother would communicate you to cease doubting yourself and execute the aspect that scares you because that's usually the aspect worth executing." Lily smiled. "She'd also remind you that you don't have to execute this alone. You've acquired Dr. Sullivan, Victoria, Madison, and me. We're a team. Let us assist carry the weight." The decision was made that evening. They would accept the NIH funding, commit to the formal studies, and construct something that could actually alter the industry. It was terrifying and exciting and felt like standing at the edge of something enormous. The next year was a blur of growth and challenge. The laboratory expanded into adjacent space, adding workstations and equipment. They hired 3 additional technicians, all of them trained by Dr. Sullivan and Nathan in the patient-centered approach that had become their signature. They brought on a full-time researcher to handle data collection and analysis for the NIH study. Madison's role grew too. She commenced speaking at conferences, sharing her story and advocating for patient-centered design in medical apparatus. Her blog attracted tens of thousands of followers, individuals who discovered hope in her journey and the laboratory's mission. She became the face of the movement in a manner that made Nathan deeply uncomfortable with his own growing public profile, but immensely proud of her courage. The research results commenced coming in after 6 months, and they were even better than Nathan had hoped. Patients utilizing modified apparatus displayed significant improvements in pain levels, mobility, and quality of existence compared to those utilizing standard equipment. The modifications were safe, effective, and reproducible when executed following the protocols they developed. Dr. Sullivan published the preliminary findings in a major medical journal, with Nathan listed as co-author despite his protest that he hadn't truly written anything. The paper sparked intense discussion in the medical apparatus community, some celebrating the innovation, others criticizing the methodology or questioning whether mechanics should be involved in medical care at all. But the patients kept coming. Word of mouth brought individuals from across the nation, families who'd exhausted other options and were desperate for assistance. The laboratory couldn't accommodate everyone, but they documented their methods carefully, trained other facilities in their approach, and slowly constructed a network of providers who comprehended that listening to patients was just as important as engineering expertise. Lily graduated from middle school and commenced high school, already conversing about studying biomedical engineering in college. She discovered her calling observing her father labor, witnessing the impact of combining technical skill with human empathy. Nathan couldn't have been more proud. On the 1-year anniversary of the laboratory's opening, they held a small celebration. Current and former patients came, along with their families, creating a chamber full of individuals who represented existences altered by the simple act of listening and caring. Benjamin was there, running around with other kids, his braces barely noticeable. A veteran named James, who'd regained use of his prosthetic arm after years of it sitting unused in a closet. A young woman named Rachel, who'd returned to college after modified braces finally let her navigate campus without constant pain. And Madison, of course. She stood to speak, her mother beside her, both of them regarding Nathan with expressions of gratitude and affection that made him deeply uncomfortable and deeply grateful simultaneously. "A year ago, I ambulated into a workshop in pain," Madison began. "I'd been in pain for so extended I'd nearly forgotten what it felt like to not hurt. Nathan regarded me, truly regarded me, and witnessed something everyone else had missed. He witnessed that my pain wasn't inevitable, it was fixable." She paused, collecting herself. "But what we've constructed here is about more than fixing braces or prosthetics. It's about fixing a system that forgot to position patients first. It's about proving that expertise isn't just about credentials. It's about caring sufficiently to truly comprehend someone's experience and brave sufficiently to challenge conventional wisdom when it's causing harm." Madison regarded directly at Nathan. "You gave me my existence back, but more than that, you gave me purpose. Laboring here, assisting other individuals discover the identical relief and freedom I discovered, that's become my existence's labor. Gratitude for perceiving me when I felt invisible. Gratitude for not surrendering when aspects acquired hard. Gratitude for keeping your commitment to your brother by assisting me and everyone else who's ambulated through these entrances." The chamber applauded, and Nathan had to blink hard against tears. He wasn't good at this. The emotion, the recognition, the feeling of being valued for something beyond just his technical skills. But standing there surrounded by individuals whose existences he'd touched, he let himself feel it fully. Dr. Sullivan spoke next, conversing about the future, expanded research, new collaborations, the possibility of altering industry standards for medical apparatus design. Victoria announced additional funding to support pro bono labor for families who couldn't afford modifications. Lily surprised everyone by presenting a scholarship fund she'd created in Ryan's name to support students from non-traditional backgrounds pursuing careers in biomedical engineering. "My uncle believed in second chances and questioning authority," Lily stated. "This scholarship is for kids like my father, individuals who think differently, who observe solutions others miss, who care more about results than rules. Because those are the individuals who alter the world." The celebration continued late into the evening, individuals sharing stories and laughter and hope. Nathan discovered himself standing outside as the sun set, observing the California sky turn orange and pink, feeling the weight of the past year and the commitment of what was coming. Victoria joined him, 2 vessels of coffee in hand. She passed him one without speaking, and they stood in comfortable silence for a moment. "Gratitude," Nathan stated finally, "for believing in this, for making it possible. I should be thanking you. You gave me my daughter back." Victoria's voice was thick with emotion. "Before you, Madison was just surviving. Now she's thriving. She possesses purpose and passion and a future she's excited about. That's worth more than any amount of money I could devote. She's extraordinary. What she's constructed here, the patient advocacy, the blog, the speaking, that's all her. She learned from observing you," Victoria stated. "She learned that one person who cares sufficiently can make a difference. That expertise comes in many forms. That sometimes the bravest aspect you can execute is refuse to accept that suffering is inevitable." Victoria regarded him. "You've altered a lot of existences, Nathan, not just Madison's, all of us who have been component of this." A few weeks later, Madison called Nathan with an unusual request. "There's something I want to execute, and I need your assistance." "What variety of something?" "I want to return to the beach, the one where I drowned, where everything commenced." Her voice was steady but vulnerable. "I haven't been back since the accident. I was too scared, and then I couldn't ambulate well sufficiently to actually acquire down to the water. But now you want to face it," Nathan completed. "I want to prove to myself that it doesn't own me anymore, that I'm not defined by what transpired there, but I don't want to go alone." They planned it for a Saturday morning, Madison, Victoria, Nathan, and Lily. The beach was identical as it had been 11 years ago, golden sand and rolling waves and the kind of California sunshine that made everything feel possible. Madison stood at the parking property's edge, regarding down at the water, and Nathan could observe her gathering courage. "You don't have to execute this," Victoria stated softly. "Yes, I do." Madison inhaled, then commenced ambulating down the sandy path toward the beach. The sand was challenging, shifting under her feet in manners that pavement never did, but Madison navigated it with growing confidence. The modified braces adapted to the terrain, adjusting their support as required. When she reached the hard, packed sand near the water, she ceased, staring at the waves. "This is where it transpired," she stated quietly. "Where I descended under and everything altered." Nathan stood beside her, not speaking, just being present. Lily and Victoria held back, providing Madison space. "For years, I was so angry at this location," Madison continued. "Angry at the ocean, at my 8-year-old self for swimming out too far, at my body for breaking. I felt like the young woman I was supposed to be drowned that day, and all that was left was this broken version who could never be whole again." She ambulated closer to the water, her feet at the edge where waves washed up and retreated. "But that young woman didn't drown. She survived. She combated through years of pain and limitation, and individuals communicating her to accept diminished than she deserved. She grew up into someone who refuses to let trauma define her future." Madison turned to regard Nathan. "You assisted me recall that I'm not just my injury or my limitations. I'm a person with dreams and capabilities and the right to move through the world without constant pain. You assisted me reclaim my existence." Then, before anyone could react, Madison kicked off her shoes, unstrapped her braces with practiced efficiency, and ambulated into the water. Just her feet at first, then her ankles, then deeper until small waves lapped at her calves. She stood there, arms spread, face turned toward the sun, laughing with pure joy. Victoria gasped, moving forward instinctively, but Nathan caught her arm. Let her possess this moment. She's acceptable. And Madison was acceptable, more than acceptable. She was free, standing in the water that had nearly terminated her, proving that trauma didn't have to be destiny, that the past could be faced and overcome, that broken aspects could heal more robust than they'd been before. When Madison finally came back to shore, everyone was weeping. She embraced her mother first, both of them laughing through tears, years of fear and grief and hope tangling together. Then she embraced Nathan, holding tight. Gratitude, she whispered, for everything, for perceiving me, for not surrendering, for assisting me discover my manner back to myself. You executed the hard component, Nathan stated. I just adjusted some angles and replaced some components. You're the one who possessed the courage to keep combating. They devoted the rest of the morning at the beach, conversing and ambulating and observing Lily construct elaborate sand structures with engineering precision. It was peaceful, healing, a moment of quiet triumph after a year of intense labor and alteration. On the drive home, Lily fell asleep in the passenger seat, exhausted from sun and emotion. Nathan drove in silence, thinking about how far they'd all come. A year ago, he'd been a mechanic in a struggling workshop, going through the motions of existence without truly existing. Now he was running a laboratory, assisting individuals across the nation, constructing something that might actually alter an entire industry. His phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Sullivan. NIH just approved the full 5-year funding. We're official. Time to alter the world. Nathan smiled, glancing at Lily's sleeping face, thinking about Madison standing in the waves, remembering Ryan and the commitment made in a hospital chamber 5 years ago. He'd thought that commitment was just about assisting one person if he ever acquired the chance. But it had become so much more. A mission, a calling, a manner to honor his brother's memory by making certain other individuals didn't have to suffer the manner Ryan had suffered. They pulled into the driveway as the sun was setting. Lily woke up, groggy and smiling. We home? We're home, Nathan confirmed. Inside, the house was quiet and familiar, filled with memories of the existence he'd constructed and the family he'd raised. But it felt different now too, fuller somehow, expanded by the new purpose he'd discovered and the individuals who'd become component of his extended family through the laboratory. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Madison. Gratitude for today, for everything. You didn't just fix my braces, you assisted me fix my existence. That beach used to represent the worst day of my existence. Now it represents freedom. That's the gift you gave me. Nathan read the message twice, feeling the weight of gratitude and responsibility and hope. He'd set out to keep a commitment to a dead brother. Along the manner, he discovered that fixing aspects, whether vehicles or braces or broken spirits, was more than just a job. It was a manner to make meaning from loss, to transform pain into purpose, to prove that one person who cares sufficiently truly can alter existences. Lily appeared in the entranceway, already in pajamas. What are you smiling about? Just thinking about how peculiar existence is. A year ago, I was fixing vehicles and attempting not to think excessively hard about anything. Now I'm running a research laboratory and altering the medical apparatus industry. You're still fixing aspects, Lily pointed out. Just different aspects, important aspects. Yeah, Nathan agreed. I suppose I am. That night he dreamed of Ryan, not the sick, suffering Ryan from the conclusion, but his brother as he'd been before the accident, full of existence and laughter and plans for the future. In the dream, Ryan smiled at him and stated, "You executed good, little brother. You kept your commitment." Nathan woke up with tears on his face and peace in his heart. The journey from a mechanics workshop to a federally funded research laboratory had been unexpected and often terrifying. But it had also been necessary, meaningful, and precisely where he was supposed to be. Foster Mobility Laboratory continued to grow over the following years. They assisted thousands of patients, published groundbreaking research, and slowly but surely altered how the medical apparatus industry thought about patient-centered design. Madison became a nationally recognized advocate for disability rights, speaking at conferences and advising companies on how to actually listen to the individuals utilizing their products. Lily went to college for biomedical engineering, already planning to return and labor at the laboratory after graduation, carrying forward the mission her father had commenced and her uncle had inspired. Victoria split her time between her biotech company and the laboratory, utilizing her business expertise to scale their impact, while never forgetting that it had all commenced with a broken-down Rolls-Royce and a mother's desperate hope. And Nathan kept executing what he'd always executed, listening to individuals who were suffering, observing difficulties everyone else had missed, and fixing aspects one careful adjustment at a time. He never acquired entirely comfortable with the recognition or the accolades. He was still at heart just a mechanic who'd made a commitment and refused to break it. But he'd learned that sometimes being just something was sufficient. That expertise came in many forms. That caring deeply and paying attention closely could be just as valuable as any credential or degree. That one person laboring with stubborn love and careful hands truly could construct miracles. Not by magic or genius, but by the simple, revolutionary act of listening to what individuals required and refusing to accept that their suffering was inevitable. One stubborn, loving step at a time. Up next, you've got 2 more incredible stories waiting on your screen. If this one hit you, tap to watch the next, and make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. Oh, and drop your city in the comments. I want to see where you're watching from.